Welcome to the 14th video in this video series on building an e-commerce website using React Redux, GraphQL, and Firebase. In today's video, we're going to be building our pagination. Before we get started, I just want to show you what we will have built by the end of this video's tutorial. And as you can see, this is our search page. By default, we're only fetching the first 6 products. That's our page size. We're going to add in this load more button below at the bottom of our product results. And as you can see, if I hit it, it is infinite scroll. So we'll fetch the next 6 products and we'll add them on to our search results. Likewise, if I hit it again, we'll fetch the next 6 results. It's infinite scroll. So it doesn't have pages. It just fetches more and adds them on to the bottom of our search results. And eventually, once we hit the last page of results, we'll simply hide the load more button because we have all of the results showing on the page. We're also going to be updating the other places where we have our products listings. So for example, our admin managed products will also have infinite scroll. So as you can see here, we fetch the first 6 products. We can click load more. We fetch the next 6. Likewise, until we hit the last page of results where we hide the show more button. Before we get started on this tutorial, I just want to encourage you guys to check out my official YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/simpletut. I will be posting a link in the description of this video, not only to search for my other videos, but also to find the official playlist for this series. I will be posting all the videos in this series on this playlist, and it's just a great place for you to find previous and future videos of this series and also just keep a reference for yourself. I also want to encourage you guys to check out the official GitHub repository for this project. At the end of each of my tutorials, I create a PR and I merge that with the master branch. So if at any point you want to compare your code with mine, or maybe you just want to clone the entire project, then feel free to do that. Again, I'll be posting a link to this and my YouTube channel and the playlist in the description of this video. But of course, as always, please like, comment, and subscribe. So this is what pagination is. What it is you specify a page size. Let's say you want to only render 10 products per page, and then you will allow the user to select next, back, or a specific page number so that they can scroll through your results. I want to come over to Amazon.com before we actually build our own pagination and just show you a real-world example of what pagination is, how it looks and works. So this is Amazon. As I said, I've done a quick search for PlayStation 4 games. I'm just going to scroll to the bottom of the page and you'll see that this is their pagination. You can click on a specific page number to navigate away to another page of results, or you can just click on next and you're just able to scroll through the results very simply like that. Okay, so the first thing that we want to do is we want to work on the UI component that we're actually going to render below our search results. So it's going to be our load more button that a user can hit to load more products. So what we'll do is head back over to our text editor. We're going to come into the source and components directory and we're going to create a new folder. We're going to call this load more, and inside of that folder we'll just create index.js. And this is going to be our pagination component. So we just need to go ahead and import React from React. And we want to just create this as a functional component. So I'm going to call it load more. And this is just going to equal, of course, a function. And we'll worry about props a bit later, but we want to do an explicit return. And again, we'll look at that a bit later. But what we want to do is just create our export. So we'll say export default load more. And what I want to do here is actually reuse an existing component. So within our forms directory, in an earlier tutorial of the series, we created a reusable button component. It's very simple. It allows us to pass in some custom props, but it actually already has some default styling defined that I want to make use of. It helps us with consistency and just saves us a bit of time. So I'm going to go ahead and import that here. So within my pagination load more component, I'm going to import my button. And we're going to import that from forms and button. And then I'm just going to render out that button here. And of course, the text that I want to display here is just going to be load more. like that. Now, thinking ahead, what we actually want to do here is we want to emit an event every time that this button is clicked to the parent component, where we can actually handle the event, where we can actually go and fetch the next page of results. We don't actually want to handle that logic within the pagination component itself. So this is going to be a fairly dumb component, and it's just going to pass that event to the parent. We're going to call the event onload more event. And by default, we're just going to return a simple function. And what we'll do is on the onClick event, what we'll do is we'll just call this function, which will just emit that event to the parent. So that's pretty much it in regards to the pagination component. It's very simple. But what we can do now already is actually come over to our product results component, which is here, and we can render out our pagination, right? So this is our product results component. So I'm going to go ahead and import that. So here at the top of the file, I'll import my load more component. So we want to import that from load more, and we're just going to import that and render it. So I'm going to render it underneath the product results there. So as you know, we need to pass that pass the function that will actually handle the event, and this is going to be called onload more. So what I'll do is, before the return statement on product results, I'm going to create a config object. So we'll say const config load more, and we need to pass a function here that we'll actually be able to use as the event. So I'm going to create another function here called const handle load more, and it's just going to equal a function. And for now, we're not going to do anything, but we are going to pass this to our load more component. So we just need to pass that config to the load more component, and we can save that. And let's have a quick look at the page to see how this looks. So that looks pretty much how I want it. At the moment, it doesn't do anything if I click on this, but we've already inherited the styles and it looks pretty good. So what we want to do is actually work on the logic that will actually handle this. We've kind of completed the UI that we needed to build. Now we need to focus on the functionality. So to do that, what we actually need to do is take a look at the helper function we've written in a previous tutorial that actually handles fetching the data from our Firestore. So let's come back over to our text editor. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually just going to talk you through the process and how we actually go and fetch the data. Because of course this is a React application, we are using Firebase, but we're using a combination of React Redux, React hooks, and of also Redux and Redux Saga to actually handle our data within the application. So let's see how this works. So what we're currently doing, we have our product results component, and within this component we are using the use effect hook. Within that, we're dispatching an action to go out and fetch the products. So let's take a quick look at that action. What this action is doing is it's got a type and a payload. We're just passing in the filters to this action. And if we actually look at our Saga, so in our Redux folder, we have our sagas. We have our fetch product start. And of course, that calls another generator function here, which is fetch products, which is this one. And we're taking the payload. Currently, we're destructuring only the filter type, and then passing that through to a helper function. And if I go into that file, this is our helper function where we're actually calling our Firestore and making our query and actually fetching the data from our collection. Now, as you know, as I mentioned here, we're currently destructuring only the filter type from our payload. There's not really a reason for us to do this. What I'm actually going to do here is I'm just going to get the payload and I'm going to pass that in to our helper function here, because we're actually destructuring from the payload within our helper function. So there's really no need to do that within our generator function in our Sagas file. We can just do that here in our helper function where we're actually making the call. And that's just going to make our lives a little bit easier, because we do need to pass in a few more options here to handle our pagination. Now, believe it or not, implementing pagination with our Firestore is actually going to be incredibly easy. The first thing that we need to do is actually specify a page size. So if you remember, if we look at the browser, you'll see that currently we're fetching the entire collection and we're rendering them on the page. What we now want to do is we want to limit that to a set number that we will display per query and per page. So in this case, I'm going to set this as 6. Now you can specify any page size that you want, but I'm going to set that as a constant at the top of this function. So, well, at the top of the promise. So I'm going to say page size, and I'm going to set this to 6, but feel free to set this to any number that you want. It just goes with my page layout. I have a 3 column on each row, and I want 2 rows, so that's going to be a nice number for me to work with. And then actually implementing that size is incredibly easy. So on this first line here, I'm going to chain on another method called limit. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to pass in the page size. And already, if I save these changes, if I come to the browser, you'll see that I'm now only fetching 6 results. And if I click load more, nothing's happening because I haven't gotten to that part yet. But you can see this is why we need to have a pagination component. But of course, you can see how this has really already made a huge difference. So the next thing that we need to do is we need to do a small refactor on how this is actually going to work, because, well, actually what I need to first of all explain is how the client APIs work. So if you're already familiar with pagination, if you've worked with Mongo, like another service as a backend, which is what Firebase is, or if you've worked with MySQL or even a NoSQL database like MongoDB, what you might be more familiar with is being able to pass a page number to an API and then getting back the data. Well, Firebase is not actually going to allow us, well, the client APIs that Firebase provide don't actually allow us to pass page numbers. We actually have to pass a document, a reference document, and then specify that we either want to end at that document or we want to start at or after that document. So again, this might not make sense right now, but hopefully it will by the end of this tutorial once we start writing out the code. So again, just to explain that, we're creating a reference document here. We're then getting a snapshot, and then that snapshot contains documents that we can map through and get the data before we pass that back to the backend in the form of an array. Well, what we need to do is actually get hold of the last document here before we map it and pass that back to the front end, so that whenever we actually hit our load more button, what we're actually going to do is make another call back to this helper function. It's going to receive what we're going to call a start after doc, and then what we'll be able to do is we'll be able to get hold of this, and just like we did for our filter type, if this exists, it means that we've called the load more. It means that we've hit load more, in which case what we want to do is we want to chain on another method, which is the start after method, and we need to pass this start after doc. So again, to kind of explain that again, what we're doing is we're saying, if you look at the web page, right, imagine that each one of these products is a document, right? But this is the first 6 documents of our collection. What we want to do to get the second page is send the 6th document back to our API, where we say, or our function rather, and say that that 6th document, which is here, is our starting point for the next 6 documents in our collection. So we're starting from that point. So hopefully that kind of explains it. I know it's probably a little bit difficult to understand until you see it working, but what this will also mean is we need to make a slight change to what we actually send back to the front end, because we now need to send more than just the basic array. We need to also send this document. So, and again, just bear with me, and hopefully this will make sense more as we go. So the first thing that I want to do here is I want to rename this to data, right? Rather than just returning the products array here. What I'm actually going to do is return an object with the data, and the data is what we need to then map on the front end. And what we're going to do is we're going to create an array, and you'll see why in a moment, right? And we're going to simply use a spread operator to pass in whatever documents that we are going to map for this particular query. And this is what we're sending back to the front end. Now, what we want to do is also send the last document, right, that I've mentioned already we'll need whenever the user hits load more. So what I'm also going to send back here is the query doc, the document that we want to send in the next query. So we're going to call this query doc, and what we'll do is simply call snapshot.docs, and this is a complete array of all the documents we've gotten back with this query, but we only want to send the last document. So there's a number of ways of doing that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to say at the top of this function, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new constant called total count. And this is just going to equal the snapshot.size. And I'm defining this as a constant because I'm going to use it a little bit later for something else too. So I'm only going to define this once. And we want to specify the position of the document that we want. We want the total count -1, which will give us the last element within the array, which is the one that we want. And then finally, we need to know if this is the last page or not. So we want to know if there is more data that we can fetch, or if this is the last page, we will want to actually hide the load more button, because of course there's no more data, and that will help us create a better user experience. So we're going to create another key on the object we're sending back called isLastPage, and this is simply going to read total count is greater than 1. Sorry, is less than 1. And what that will give us is this will evaluate to a Boolean value, either true or false, and we're going to use that on the front end. Okay, so now let's come back over to our product results, because we need to make a few changes. So we've made some breaking changes. If I actually show you in the browser, what you'll see is we're not getting any results. The reason is that previously we were getting the products directly from our Redux store and mapping them directly. Now products is actually an object, and we need to destructure from products. We need to destructure data, and this is actually what we're going to need to create our guards on, and it's also what we're going to be mapping on the front end. So rather than just mapping products, we're going to map data, which we've destructured from products. So again, if we come back to the browser, you'll see that we're getting our results, but our load more is still not going to work. We still need to do a few more things. So what we need to do is we need to dispatch the same action with the filter type within our handle load more function. But we need to pass those additional options that our helper function is expecting, which is the start after doc. So if we come back here within our handle load more function, we're going to pass that. But what we're going to pass is our query doc, right? So we're going to destructure that from products. So we'll say query doc. And this is actually what we're sending back here, right? So this is our query doc. And this is what we're sending back to the front end. So what we'll do is our start after doc is going to be our query doc. Now, if I was to actually come back here, now what you will see is our load more button now works, right? We are able to fetch the next page of results, but it's not exactly how we want it to work, right? We've lost the original results that we had. And really, I want this to work more like infinite scroll, where we just fetch more data and we add them on to the end of our results. So we need to be able to persist the original page of results that we fetched for the first page. So again, if you're kind of struggling to understand what I'm talking about, then just bear with me. It's going to make a lot more sense shortly. So what we want to do within our product results, right, is we want to send back our data. So within our products helper function here, we're going to pass another option here, which is going to be the ability to persist products. And then what we'll do is we're going to set a default value of an empty array in case this is not passed. But where we have our data array, we're going to again use the spread operator and pass in the previous products that we already have on the front end from previous calls. And again, this is already being sent in the data, so we can just save that. We can come back to our product results, and now where we actually dispatch this action within our handle load more, I'm going to pass another option here. I'm just going to move these onto separate lines, which is going to be that persist products. And we're going to pass our data. Now, if I come back over to our page and I click on load more, what you're going to see is we persist our results, right? So we just reveal more, we fetch more. We don't lose the results we already have on the page. So that's great, but the load more never disappears, right? Which is not how we want this to work. So what we need to do now is figure out how we can hide that. So what we're going to do is we're going to come back over to our helper function, and as you can see, we have this is lost page. We need to, on our product results, we need to destructure this from our is lost page and from our products, and we need to wrap our load more button in a condition, right? Which is going to be that this has to be false to render, right? So we will conditionally render our load more component, and now we can look at our page again, and let's see how this works. So I'm just going to reload the page, and you can see if I click on load more, I get more results. If I click on it again, I get all the results. And if I click on it again, there's no more results in the collection. So we simply hide the load more, and we have now revealed all the products in the collection. Likewise, if I come over and I filter into, for example, men's, I'm able to still see load more. But once I've got all of the products in the collection, the load more simply gets hidden because we've revealed all of the products. And likewise with women's, if there are no products to reveal or fetch, then we simply hide the load more because there are no more products to fetch. So we've successfully implemented pagination, and really it's infinite scroll within our search page and our application. Okay, so at this point, we've successfully implemented pagination on our search page, but we have made breaking changes. So we are using this same helper function in another component, and that's our admin manage products. If I actually come back over to my admin, you're going to see that we're getting an error because of those breaking changes. So we're going to have to quickly come over to our admin component and fix it. So what we're going to do is we're just going to come back over to our text editor. We're going to close all these files because we're done with those. And we're just going to come over to our admin page component where we are currently using products from our Redux store. And like we did before, what we need to do is we need to destructure data from products. We can't use products directly. It's not an array anymore. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna simply map that rather than products. So we're doing that here. We actually need to have a condition here, right? Which is going to be, first of all, array.isArray, and also that the data length is greater than 0. If that is true, we want to go ahead and map data. So what we can then do is just return to the browser, revisit that page. You'll see we're fetching our products again. We're not getting an error. But again, we now have a page size. We don't have any pagination on the page, so we're unable to see all of the products in our collection. We need to implement the same load more functionality. The good news is that's going to be very easy because we've already built it for our search page. So we just have to implement that component here too. So let's go ahead and import load more. We can import that from the same component. So we'll just say we want to come out to our components folder and load more. And then all we want to do is render this on the page to start off with. So if I come down, I'm going to look in. So we have this table here. This is the table where we map our results. Within the parent table here, we have a row. We have the row here. So I'm going to create another row with another table data. And what I might do is use that first one as a space. So I'll create a second row with another TD. And what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to render my load more. In fact, really, this should go in another table, to be honest. So I'll just quickly do that. We'll say border equals 0. We want cell padding. Again, that should have 0. And then cell spacing, again, should be 0. Then we have our T body and our table row and table data. And then we have our load more component. So that's a little bit long-winded, but we got there. Let's look at this in the browser. Let's come back over. And you see we have our load more component. Would be nice to have a little bit of space there. So what I'm going to do for cell padding is just set that to 10 pixels. Let's come back over. Yep, there we go. There's our load more. That looks good. But it's not doing anything. So what we need to do is pass in that config object. So up here before my return statement, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to create a const called config load more. It's going to equal an object. And again, if I look at the load more component, we need to get hold of this, the name of the callback event that we are going to need to pass. And again, we need to define that. So we'll say handle load more. That's going to again equal a function, which is pretty straightforward. And we'll pass that in for our callback. And then of course we just need to pass our config object here for load more. We need to actually pass that down to the component. So we'll simply go ahead and do that. But of course this function's not actually doing anything at the moment. So I'm gonna just copy the code we have in our useEffect hook. Notice here that on this particular component, we're not passing any filters at the moment because we don't have filters on our admin page. That's absolutely fine. And what we want to do here is we do want to pass some options. So what we still need to pass, and if I come back over to our helper function, we can actually just make sure we copy over the right names. We want to pass our start after doc and persist results. Persist products. So again, back on our load more function here, we need to pass these two values. So the key for persist products, it's going to take our data. We already have that destructured from the top of the file here. But we also need to now destructure our query doc. And I'm going to copy that. And I'm going to pass that in as the start of the doc. So we can now save that. And we can come back over to the browser. Return to our admin page. Click on load more. Notice at the moment I'm on 6. If I click on load more, you can see we've loaded more. So there's 6. There's all the products. If I click on it again, we come down. We are on 12, and so on and so forth. Now we're not hiding the load more when we hit the last page. So what we also want to do, again, if I look at my helper function, we have is lost page. So again, at the top of the file, what we want to do is destructure from products our is lost page. And again, we will wrap our load more button in that condition. So we'll say if is lost page evaluates, we only want to render this basically if this is false. So if it's true, we don't want to render it. Let's save that and come back to the browser, back to our admin page. Let's scroll through to the last page, the last result. And you can see we hide it once all of the products are listed on the page. And that brings us to the end of this video tutorial where we have successfully implemented pagination on our search page and our admin managed products page. But before I sign off, I just want to remind you guys that at the end of each one of these videos, I am creating PRs. I'm merging those PRs with my master branch on the official GitHub repository for this project, which you guys will have access to. I'll be posting a link directly in the description of this video. Feel free to check this repository out. Please do star and fork this project. I really appreciate your support. But again, I just want to remind you guys to check out the official YouTube playlist for this series. Again, I'll be posting a link in the description of the video. But apart from that, I just want to encourage you guys to check out my official YouTube channel. Again, that's youtube.com/simpletut. And please like, comment, and subscribe.